Introduction. Crossroads of empires and cultures. The enduring spirit of Bulgaria nestled in the heart of the Balkan Peninsula. The lands that constitute modern Bulgaria have for millennia served as a vibrant crossroads, a bridge between Europe and Asia, a stage upon which empires have risen and fallen, and a crucible where diverse cultures have met, clashed, and intermingled. The history of Bulgaria is a rich and often dramatic tapestry, woven with threads of ancient civilizations, powerful medieval kingdoms, centuries of foreign domination, and a resilient national spirit that has persevered through profound trials to forge a modern European nation. This journey through time reveals a story not just of kings and battles, but of a people who have made enduring contributions to the wider world, shaping the cultural and religious landscape of much of Eastern Europe. From the enigmatic Thracians who left behind stunning golden treasures and tales of legendary heroes, to the arrival of the Turkic Bulgars and Slavic tribes who together laid the foundations of a new state and a unique identity, the early chapters of Bulgarian history are steeped in myth and migration. The First Bulgarian Empire, born in the late 7th century, would rise to become a dominant power in southeastern Europe, a formidable rival to the Byzantine Empire itself. This era witnessed not only military might and territorial expansion but also moments of profound cultural significance. The adoption of Christianity, which anchored Bulgaria firmly within the orbit of European civilization, and the development and dissemination of the Cyrillic script, an alphabet that would become the vehicle for literacy and religious expression for hundreds of millions of Slavs. The reign of Tsar Simeon I, in particular, is remembered as a golden age, a period of extraordinary cultural flourishing and imperial ambition. Yet, the fortunes of empires are ever shifting. The First Bulgarian Empire eventually succumbed to Byzantine might, ushering in a period of foreign rule. But the Bulgarian spirit was not extinguished. A successful uprising in the late 12th century led to the establishment of the Second Bulgarian Empire, which, under rulers like Ivan Asen II, experienced another era of power and cultural achievement, its capital Tarnovo becoming a renowned center of art and learning. However, internal fragmentation and the inexorable rise of a new and formidable power from the east, the Ottoman Turks, gradually led to the decline and eventual conquest of medieval Bulgaria by the late 14th and early 15th centuries. What followed was nearly 5 centuries of Ottoman domination, a period often referred to as the Long Night in Bulgarian historiography. It was a time of hardship, oppression, and efforts to preserve a distinct Bulgarian identity, language, and faith in the face of immense pressure. Yet, even in these darkest times, the flame of Bulgarian culture was kept alive in remote monasteries and through the quiet resilience of its people. By the 18th and 19th centuries, this ember would be fanned into a powerful national revival. Inspired by figures like Father Paisi Hilandarski, who reminded his compatriots of their glorious past, Bulgarians embarked on a path of cultural and spiritual awakening, leading to struggles for educational autonomy, an independent church, and ultimately, political liberation. The birth of the Third Bulgarian state in 1878, following the Russo-Turkish War, marked a new chapter filled with both promise and profound challenges. The subsequent decades were characterized by fervent nation-building, the pursuit of territorial unification, involvement in the tumultuous Balkan Wars and the two World Wars, and dramatic shifts in political ideologies. The establishment of a communist regime after World War II brought nearly half a century of single-party rule and alignment with the Soviet Union, a period of significant social and economic transformation but also political repression. The fall of communism in 1989 opened yet another new path, one leading towards democratic reforms, a market economy, and integration into the wider European community, culminating in Bulgaria's accession to NATO and the European Union in the early 21st century. This extensive account will journey through these major epochs of Bulgarian history. We will explore the rise and fall of its empires, the lives of its most significant rulers and cultural figures, the social and economic conditions of its people, their struggles for freedom and self-determination, and their enduring contributions to the rich mosaic of European civilization. It is a story of remarkable resilience, a testament to the enduring spirit of a nation located at one of the world's most dynamic and often contested crossroads. Part 1. Ancient Roots and the Forging of a Nation, Antiquity, Late 7th Century Common Era, Chapter 1. Echoes of Antiquity. the Thracians and other early inhabitants. The lands that today form Bulgaria are steeped in an ancient history, bearing witness to some of Europe's earliest sophisticated cultures long before the arrival of the peoples who would eventually give the nation its name. Archaeological discoveries across Bulgaria have unearthed compelling evidence of vibrant Neolithic and Chalcolithic, or Copper Age, settlements dating back thousands of years. Among the most remarkable of these is the Varna necropolis, a Chalcolithic burial site discovered near the Black Sea coast. Dating to the 5th millennium before Common Era, the Varna graves yielded an astonishing collection of gold artifacts, intricate jewelry, scepters, and decorative items, considered by many to be the oldest processed gold treasure in the world. This find points to a highly developed society with complex social hierarchies, advanced metallurgical skills, and sophisticated religious beliefs, flourishing in the Bulgarian lands long before the rise of the classical civilizations of Greece and Rome. By the Bronze Age and Iron Age, the most prominent inhabitants of this region were the numerous tribes collectively known as the Thracians. An Indo-European people, the Thracians occupied a vast territory encompassing not only modern Bulgaria but also parts of present-day Romania, Greece, Turkey, Serbia, and North Macedonia. They were not a unified nation but rather a mosaic of independent tribes, often warring amongst themselves, though capable of forming powerful tribal confederations when faced with external threats. Among the most notable Thracian tribes were the Odrysians, who managed to create a significant kingdom in the 5th century before Common Era, the Getae, the Tribali, and the Bessi. The Thracians were renowned in the ancient world as fierce warriors and skilled horsemen. Greek historians like Herodotus described them as numerous and warlike, their infantry often armed with javelins and distinctive crescent-shaped shields called peltai, and their cavalry highly prized as mercenaries in other armies. They were also known for their vibrant culture, their love of music and poetry, and their distinctive religious practices. Thracian religion was polytheistic, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses often associated with natural forces and the cycle of life and death. Key deities included Zalmoxis, Bendis, a goddess often equated with the Greek Artemis, and a horseman god known as the Thracian rider, whose image is found on numerous reliefs. The legendary figure of Orpheus, the mythical poet and musician whose melodies could charm wild beasts and even the gods of the underworld, is deeply rooted in Thracian mythology, as is the ecstatic cult of Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and revelry, which also had strong Thracian connections. Thracian artistic achievements are particularly evident in their exquisite metalwork, especially in gold and silver. Magnificent treasures, such as the Panegyrishta treasure with its ornate golden rhytons and philae, the Rogozan treasure, and the Vulcatron treasure, attest to the wealth of Thracian rulers and the exceptional skill of their craftsmen. Elaborate burial mounds, or tumuli, containing rich grave goods and often featuring impressive stone tombs with sophisticated architecture and frescoes, like those found at Kazanlak and Sveshdari, which are now UNESCO World Heritage Sites, provide further insights into Thracian aristocratic life and beliefs about the afterlife. The Thracians had complex interactions with their neighbors. They traded extensively with the Greek colonies established along the Black Sea and Aegean coasts, absorbing Greek cultural influences while also retaining their distinct identity. They clashed with the expanding Persian Empire under Darius and Xerxes. Philip II of Macedon and his son, Alexander the Great, subjugated many Thracian tribes in the 4th century before Common Era, incorporating Thracian warriors into their armies for their campaigns. Later, the rising power of Rome gradually extended its dominion over the Balkans. After a series of conflicts and alliances, the Thracian lands were fully incorporated into the Roman Empire by the mid-1st century Common Era, becoming the provinces of Moesia and Thrace. Under Roman rule, the region underwent significant Romanization. Roads were built, cities like Serdica, modern Sofia, Philippopolis, Plovdiv, and Iskus were developed as important administrative and commercial centers, and Roman law and culture were introduced. Early Christianity also began to spread in these provinces, establishing some of the oldest Christian communities in Europe. The Thracian language and distinct cultural identity gradually faded over the centuries of Roman rule, but the genetic and cultural legacy contributed to the complex tapestry of peoples who would later inhabit these lands. Chapter 2. The Great Migrations, Slavs and Bulgars reshaped the Balkans the centuries following the decline of Roman power in the west and the weakening of the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire's hold on its Balkan provinces were marked by profound demographic and political transformations, driven by the so-called Great Migrations. During this turbulent period, new groups of people moved into southeastern Europe, fundamentally reshaping its ethnic and cultural landscape. Among the most significant of these were the Slavs and the Bulgars, whose arrival and subsequent interaction would lay the foundations for the future Bulgarian state and nation. Beginning in the late 5th and particularly during the 6th and early 7th centuries Common Era, various Slavic tribes began to migrate southwards from their ancestral homelands, which are generally believed to have been located in Eastern or Central Europe, north of the Carpathian Mountains and east of the Vistula River. Driven by a combination of factors, possibly including pressure from other migrating groups like the Avars, demographic growth, and the allure of the richer lands of the Byzantine Empire, these Slavic groups crossed the Danube River, the traditional northern frontier of Byzantium, in successive waves. They initially conducted raids deep into Byzantine territory, but over time, they began to settle permanently in large numbers across the Balkan Peninsula, from the Adriatic Sea to the Black Sea, and from the Danube south into Greece. The Slavs who settled in the lands of modern Bulgaria and neighboring regions were primarily agriculturalists. They lived in relatively small, often decentralized communities, organized along tribal or clan lines. They practiced a form of paganism, worshipping a pantheon of nature deities and spirits, with Perun, the god of thunder and lightning, being one of the most prominent. While they were not initially a unified political force and lacked the sophisticated state structures of the Byzantine Empire, their sheer numbers and widespread settlement fundamentally altered the ethnic composition of the Balkans. The pre-existing Romanized and Hellenized populations were either assimilated, displaced, or confined to fortified cities and coastal areas. By the mid-7th century, much of the Balkan interior had become predominantly Slavic in character and language. Around the same time that the Slavs were establishing themselves in the Balkans, another distinct group, the Bulgars, also known as Proto-Bulgarians, were making their own journey westward. The origins of the Bulgars are a subject of ongoing scholarly debate, with theories pointing to Turkic, Iranian, or mixed Turkic-Iranian roots. They are believed to have migrated from Central Asia, and by the early 7th century, they had established a powerful tribal confederation known as Old Great Bulgaria, located in the steppes north of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, in what is today southern Ukraine and southwestern Russia. The most famous ruler of Old Great Bulgaria was Khan Kubrat, who managed to unite various Bulgar tribes and maintain a degree of independence from other nomadic powers like the Khazars. The Bulgars were a semi-nomadic people, renowned for their equestrian skills, military organization, and sophisticated statecraft, honed by centuries of life on the Eurasian steppes. They had a well-defined social hierarchy, with a ruling Khan and a powerful warrior aristocracy. Their society was organized along clan lines, and they possessed a distinct Turkic language and a Tengristic pagan religion, worshipping Tangra, the sky god. However, Old Great Bulgaria proved to be a relatively short-lived entity. Following Khan Kubrat's death in the mid-7th century, his empire disintegrated under pressure from the Khazars. According to Byzantine chroniclers, Kubrat's 5 sons led different groups of Bulgars in various directions. One of these sons, Khan Aspara, led his Bulgar tribes westward, seeking new lands and new opportunities. They crossed the Dnieper and Dniester rivers and eventually arrived at the mouth of the Danube River, on the northeastern frontier of the Byzantine Empire, in the latter half of the 7th century. It was here, in the lands already extensively settled by Slavic tribes, that Aspara's Bulgars would play a decisive role in forging a new state and a new identity. Chapter 3. A New Beginning, Khan Aspara and the Birth of the Bulgarian State, 681 Common Era. The arrival of Khan Aspara and his Bulgar warriors at the delta of the Danube River in the late 670s Common Era marked a pivotal moment in Balkan history. These Bulgars, a well-organized and battle-hardened group displaced from their previous homeland north of the Black Sea, were seeking new territories to settle and establish their authority. The region they entered, Moesia, was nominally under Byzantine control but had been extensively settled by numerous Slavic tribes over the preceding century. It was the interaction between these two distinct groups, the Bulgars and the Slavs, under the leadership of Aspara, that would lead to the foundation of the first enduring Bulgarian state. Initially, the relationship between the newly arrived Bulgars and the local Slavic population may have been one of conflict or competition for resources. However, a shared interest in resisting the authority of the Byzantine Empire, which sought to reassert its control over the region, likely drove them towards an alliance. The Slavs, though numerous, lacked centralized political and military organization. The Bulgars, while fewer in number, possessed a strong military structure, experienced leadership, and a tradition of statecraft. A symbiotic relationship emerged. The Bulgars provided the military and political leadership needed to forge a state and defend it against Byzantium, while the Slavs contributed their numbers, agricultural knowledge, and familiarity with the local terrain. Over time, this cohabitation and cooperation would lead to a gradual fusion of the two peoples, forming the basis of the Bulgarian ethnicity and culture, with the Slavic language eventually becoming dominant. The Byzantine emperor at the time, Constantine IV, viewed the Bulgar presence south of the Danube as a serious threat to imperial interests. In 680 Common Era, he launched a major military campaign by land and sea to dislodge Aspara and his followers. The Byzantine army, personally led by the emperor, advanced into the marshy area around the Danube delta where the Bulgars had established a fortified camp. However, the campaign proved disastrous for the Byzantines. Emperor Constantine IV was forced to withdraw due to illness, reportedly gout, and his absence led to a collapse in the morale of his troops. Aspara seized the opportunity, launching a surprise attack on the demoralized and retreating Byzantine forces at a place called Ongul, the exact location of which is still debated but was likely in the vicinity of the Danube Delta or in southern Bessarabia. The Byzantine army suffered a crushing defeat. This victory at Ongul was a decisive moment. It demonstrated the military prowess of the Bulgars and effectively secured their position in Moesia. Following the battle, Aspara's forces advanced southwards, crossing the Balkan mountains, Staraplanina, and raiding into Byzantine Thrace. Unable to expel the Bulgars militarily, and facing threats on other frontiers of his empire, Emperor Constantine IV was compelled to negotiate. In the year 681 Common Era, a peace treaty was concluded between the Byzantine Empire and Khan Aspara's Bulgaria. By the terms of this treaty, Byzantium formally recognized the new Bulgarian state established in the lands south of the Danube, between the Balkan Mountains and the river. Perhaps even more significantly, the Byzantine Empire agreed to pay an annual tribute to the Bulgarian Khan, a humiliating acknowledgement of Bulgaria's newfound power and sovereignty. This Treaty of 681 is traditionally regarded by historians as the official birth date of the first Bulgarian state. Khan Aspara established his capital at Pliska, an extensive fortified encampment located on a plain in northeastern Bulgaria. The early Bulgarian state was a dualistic entity, with the Bulgar elite forming the ruling military and administrative class, while the more numerous Slavs constituted the bulk of the agricultural population. The Khan, as the supreme ruler, held considerable power, supported by a council of Bulgar nobles, known as boyars or boyars. The early state was organized along military lines, geared towards defense against Byzantium and further territorial expansion. While the Bulgars initially maintained their distinct language, customs, and pagan religion, the process of assimilation with the Slavic majority began almost immediately, a process that would accelerate in the centuries to come, eventually leading to the dominance of Slavic language and culture within a state that proudly bore the Bulgar name. The foundation laid by Aspara was a remarkable achievement, creating a new and enduring power on the European political map, one that would soon rise to challenge the might of the Byzantine Empire itself. Part 2. The First Bulgarian Empire, Power, Conversion, and Golden Age, Late 7th Century, Early 11th Century Common Era, Chapter 1, Consolidation, Expansion, and Conflict. The early Khans following the formal recognition of the Bulgarian state by the Byzantine Empire in 681 Common Era, the immediate successors of Khan Aspara focused on consolidating their new realm, strengthening its institutions, and expanding its frontiers. The relationship with Byzantium remained the central axis of Bulgarian foreign policy, a complex interplay of warfare, diplomacy, and cultural exchange that would define much of the First Bulgarian Empire's history. Khan Tervel, who succeeded Aspara around the year 700, played a particularly significant role in these early years, earning himself the moniker, Savior of Europe, from some Western chroniclers. In 705, Tervel provided crucial military assistance to the deposed Byzantine Emperor Justinian II, helping him to regain his throne. In return, Tervel was granted the High Byzantine title of Caesar, a remarkable honor for a foreign ruler, along with territorial concessions in the Zagor region of Thrace. This event significantly boosted Bulgaria's prestige. More famously, in 717–718 Common Era, Khan Tervel and his Bulgarian army intervened decisively during the Second Arab Siege of Constantinople. At a critical moment, Tervel attacked the Arab forces from the rear, inflicting heavy casualties and contributing significantly to the lifting of the siege. This Bulgarian action helped to halt the Umayyad Caliphate's advance into southeastern Europe, a contribution of considerable historical importance. The 8th century, however, was also a period of considerable internal instability for Bulgaria. Dynastic struggles and conflicts between different factions of the Bulgar nobility led to a rapid succession of rulers and a weakening of central authority. This internal turmoil was exploited by the Byzantine Empire, particularly under Emperor Constantine V, who launched a series of campaigns against Bulgaria, aiming to regain lost territories and reassert Byzantine dominance. While these campaigns caused significant damage, they ultimately failed to destroy the Bulgarian state, which managed to survive and eventually overcome its internal divisions. The reigns of Khan Krum, who ruled in the early 9th century from approximately 803 to 814, and Khan Omertag, his son and successor who ruled from 814 to 831, marked a period of renewed strength and consolidation for Bulgaria. Krum was a formidable military leader and a ruthless statesman, often referred to as Krum the Fearsome. He significantly expanded Bulgarian territory, capturing the important city of Serdica, modern-day Sofia, from the Byzantines in 809. His most famous military achievement came in 811, when the Byzantine Emperor Nikephoros I launched a major invasion of Bulgaria, sacking the capital Pliska. Krum, however, managed to trap the retreating Byzantine army in a mountain pass, possibly the Varbitsa Pass, and annihilated it. Emperor Nikephoros himself was killed in the battle, a catastrophic defeat for Byzantium. Legend has it that Krum had the emperor's skull lined with silver and used it as a drinking cup, a tale that, whether true or not, emphasized his fearsome reputation. Krum is also credited with issuing the first known written Bulgarian laws, aimed at establishing order and justice within his expanding realm. Following Krum's sudden death, his son Omertag pursued a more diplomatic approach, concluding a 30-year peace treaty with the Byzantine Empire in 815. This period of peace allowed Omertag to focus on internal consolidation and development. He undertook significant building projects, reconstructing Pliska and erecting new palaces and fortifications. He also left behind important stone inscriptions in Greek, which provide valuable insights into the events of his reign and the ideology of the early Bulgarian state. These inscriptions emphasize his role as a divinely appointed ruler and celebrate his military victories and building achievements. Omertag also had to deal with administrative challenges in integrating new territories and diverse populations, and he suppressed rebellions among some Slavic tribes. While he maintained the traditional Bulgar paganism and persecuted Christians within his realm, his reign was characterized by stability, administrative reform, and a strengthening of the Bulgarian state, laying important groundwork for the profound changes that were to come later in the 9th century. The reigns of these early Khans, from Tervel's strategic interventions to Krum's military prowess and Omertag's state building, were crucial in establishing Bulgaria as a major and resilient power in southeastern Europe. Chapter 2. A pivotal choice, Boris I and the Christianization of Bulgaria. Mid-9th century, the mid-9th century witnessed a decision of profound and lasting significance for the Bulgarian state and its people, the official adoption of Christianity. This pivotal choice, made under the astute leadership of Khan Boris I, who reigned from 852 to 889, was not merely a matter of personal faith but a complex political and cultural act that would anchor Bulgaria firmly within the orbit of European Christian civilization, shape its future development, and have far-reaching consequences for the entire Slavic world. By the time Boris ascended the throne, Bulgaria was a powerful pagan state situated between two major Christian powers, the Byzantine Empire to the south and the East Frankish Kingdom, a successor to Charlemagne's empire, to the west. Both Byzantium and the Frankish Kingdom, often in competition with Rome for influence, sought to extend their religious and political sway over Bulgaria. Internally, Christianity had already begun to make inroads among the Bulgarian population through prisoners of war, merchants, and Byzantine missionaries. Khan Boris himself recognized that a pagan Bulgaria would remain somewhat isolated in an increasingly Christianized Europe and might be perceived as a less civilized or less legitimate power. Adopting Christianity offered several potential advantages. It could enhance the Khan's authority by aligning him with a universal monotheistic faith and the concept of divinely ordained rulership. It could facilitate diplomatic relations with other Christian states. And it could serve as a powerful tool for unifying the diverse population of his realm, which included Bulgars, Slavs, and remnants of other groups, under a common religious and cultural identity, thereby accelerating the ongoing process of assimilation between Bulgars and Slavs. The decision of which Christian center to turn to, Rome or Constantinople, was a delicate one. Boris initially negotiated with both the papacy in Rome, under Pope Nicholas I, and the Patriarchate of Constantinople. He sought not just conversion but also the establishment of an autonomous Bulgarian church, a status that would preserve Bulgaria's political independence and cultural distinctiveness. After a period of complex diplomatic maneuvering, during which he skillfully played Rome and Constantinople against each other, Boris ultimately opted for Eastern Orthodox Christianity as proclaimed by the Patriarchate of Constantinople. Several factors likely influenced this decision. Byzantium was geographically closer and culturally more familiar. The Byzantine emperor offered significant concessions, including recognition of Boris's authority and likely support for a degree of ecclesiastical autonomy, and perhaps Boris also feared the more direct political claims of the papacy. The official conversion of Bulgaria is traditionally dated to around the years 864 to 865 Common Era. Khan Boris himself was baptized, taking the Christian name Michael in honor of the reigning Byzantine Emperor Michael III, who acted as his godfather. The conversion, however, was not universally welcomed within Bulgaria. A significant portion of the Bulgar aristocracy, deeply attached to their traditional Tengristic pagan beliefs and perhaps fearing a loss of their privileges under the new Christian order, rose in rebellion against Boris. The Khan responded with ruthless efficiency, crushing the revolt and reportedly executing dozens of noble families who opposed Christianization. This decisive action demonstrated his unwavering commitment to the new faith. A crucial development following the conversion was the establishment of an autonomous Bulgarian archbishopric, a major step towards ecclesiastical independence. Even more significant for the future of Bulgaria and the Slavic world was Boris's decision to welcome the disciples of Saints Cyril and Methodius into his kingdom around 886. Cyril and Methodius, two Byzantine Greek brothers, had earlier created the first Slavic alphabet, Glagolitic, and had begun the monumental task of translating Christian liturgical texts into the Old Church Slavonic language, a literary language based on the Slavic dialects of the Thessaloniki region. After their mission to Great Moravia faced opposition from the Frankish clergy, their disciples, including Clement, Naum, and Angelarius, sought refuge in Bulgaria. Khan Boris, recognizing the immense cultural and political value of a liturgy and religious literature in a language understandable to his Slavic subjects, provided them with generous support. He established major literary centers, particularly at Pliska, Preslav, and Ohrid. Under his patronage, these disciples and their students continued the work of translation, adapted and simplified the Glagolitic script into what became known as the Cyrillic alphabet, named in honor of Saint Cyril, and trained a new generation of Bulgarian clergy literate in Slavonic. This effectively made Old Church Slavonic the third official liturgical language of Christendom, alongside Greek and Latin, and laid the foundation for a rich independent Slavic literary tradition. Boris I's conversion and his support for the work of Cyril and Methodius's disciples were thus transformative events, shaping not only Bulgaria's religious and cultural identity but also profoundly influencing the development of literacy and Christianity throughout the Eastern Slavic world. Chapter 3. The Golden Age of Tsar Simeon I, 893–927 Common Era, the reign of Tsar Simeon I, who ruled Bulgaria from 893 to 927 Common Era, is widely regarded as the Golden Age of the First Bulgarian Empire. Building upon the foundations laid by his father, Boris I, Simeon, a ruler of extraordinary ambition, intellect, and military prowess, elevated Bulgaria to the zenith of its power and cultural achievement, transforming it into a dominant force in southeastern Europe and a major rival to the Byzantine Empire itself. Simeon had received an excellent education in Constantinople, studying at the prestigious Magnaura school, where he immersed himself in Greek classical literature, rhetoric, and philosophy. This deep understanding of Byzantine culture and political ideology profoundly shaped his worldview and his ambitions. He was not content for Bulgaria to be merely a regional power. He envisioned it as a new Christian empire, a successor to Rome and a worthy competitor to Byzantium. Upon ascending the throne, he quickly demonstrated his formidable military capabilities. A trade dispute with Byzantium provided the pretext for his first major war, during which Bulgarian forces inflicted several defeats on the imperial armies. Over the course of his reign, Simeon waged numerous successful campaigns against the Byzantines, as well as against the Magyars and Serbs. He expanded Bulgarian territory to its greatest extent, stretching from the Black Sea in the east to the Adriatic Sea in the west, and from the plains of Hungary in the north down into Thrace and Macedonia, approaching the very gates of Constantinople. His military successes were matched by his imperial aspirations. Around the year 913, following a major victory, Simeon appeared before Constantinople and demanded to be crowned emperor. While the exact nature of the ceremony that took place is debated by historians, he began to style himself Tsar of the Bulgarians, and later, Tsar of the Bulgarians and the Romans, or Greeks, directly challenging the universal claims of the Byzantine emperor. He also sought to elevate the status of the Bulgarian Church, which, under his reign, was recognized as an independent patriarchate, a significant achievement that further enhanced Bulgaria's prestige and autonomy. Simeon's reign was not only a period of military expansion but also one of extraordinary cultural and literary efflorescence. He moved the capital from Pliska to Preslav, transforming it into a magnificent city intended to rival Constantinople in its splendor. Preslav became a vibrant center of learning, art, and architecture, adorned with impressive palaces, churches decorated with stone carvings, mosaics, and painted ceramics, and workshops producing exquisite jewelry and other crafts. Even more significant was the flourishing of the Preslav Literary School, which, along with the Ohrid Literary School established by Clement of Ohrid, became the heart of Slavic literacy and culture. Under Simeon's direct patronage, scholars continued the work of translating Greek religious and secular texts into Old Church Slavonic, Old Bulgarian, the literary language developed by Cyril and Methodius and their disciples. They also produced original Bulgarian works of literature, history, and theology. This intense literary activity not only enriched Bulgarian culture but also played a crucial role in disseminating the Cyrillic script and Slavonic literacy to other Slavic peoples, particularly in Serbia, Kievan Rus, and other parts of Eastern Europe. The development of this distinct Slavic literary tradition was one of the most enduring legacies of Simeon's golden age. Simeon was a complex figure. A devout Christian, a learned scholar, a brilliant military strategist, and a ruler consumed by imperial ambition. His constant wars, while expanding Bulgarian territory and prestige, also placed enormous strains on the country's resources and manpower. His relentless pursuit of the Byzantine imperial crown, though ultimately unsuccessful in capturing Constantinople itself, defined much of his reign and set the stage for continued conflict with Byzantium. Nevertheless, the golden age of Tsar Simeon I remains a period of immense pride in Bulgarian history, a time when Bulgaria stood as a powerful, culturally vibrant, and independent empire, a true intellectual and political center of the Slavic world, leaving a lasting mark on the civilization of Eastern Europe. Chapter 4: Decline and Fall, the long struggle against Byzantium. The glorious golden age of Tsar Simeon I, while marking the apogee of the First Bulgarian Empire's power and cultural influence, was followed by a long and arduous period of decline, internal strife, and ultimately, subjugation by a resurgent Byzantine Empire. The immense efforts and resources expended during Simeon's ambitious wars, coupled with changing geopolitical dynamics, gradually weakened the Bulgarian state, leading to a century of struggle for survival. Simeon's son and successor, Tsar Peter I, who reigned from 927 to 969 Common Era, inherited an empire that was vast but also exhausted. Peter sought to consolidate his father's gains and maintain peace. He concluded a long-term peace treaty with Byzantium, which recognized his imperial title of Tsar and the patriarchal status of the Bulgarian Church, and he married Maria Lecapenna, the granddaughter of the Byzantine Emperor Romanos I Lecapenos. This alliance brought several decades of relative peace between Bulgaria and Byzantium. However, Peter's reign was also beset by numerous internal and external challenges. He faced several rebellions from his own brothers and other nobles. A new religious movement known as Bogomilism emerged in Bulgaria during this period. Bogomilism, a dualist heresy that preached rejection of the material world, the established church, and secular authorities, gained considerable following among the peasantry and contributed to social unrest. Externally, Bulgaria faced increasing pressure from Magyar raids from the north and the growing power of the Pechenegs, another nomadic group from the steppes. The fragile peace with Byzantium eventually shattered in the latter half of the 10th century. A resurgent Byzantine Empire, under capable warrior emperors like Nikephoros II Phocas and John I Zimisces, adopted a more aggressive policy towards Bulgaria, aiming to reclaim lost territories and reassert Byzantine dominance in the Balkans. In 968, Nikephoros Phocas, unwilling to pay tribute to Bulgaria, allied with Svetoslav, the Prince of Kievan Rus, inciting him to attack Bulgaria from the north. Svetoslav's invasion proved devastating. He conquered much of northeastern Bulgaria, including the capital Preslav, and even harbored ambitions of establishing his own empire on the Danube. The Byzantines, initially pleased with the weakening of Bulgaria, soon realized that Svetoslav posed an even greater threat. John Zimisces, who succeeded Nikephoros Phocas, eventually turned against his erstwhile Rus allies, defeated Svetoslav, and incorporated eastern Bulgaria, including Preslav, directly into the Byzantine Empire in 971. While eastern Bulgaria fell under Byzantine control, resistance continued in the western Bulgarian lands, which remained independent for several more decades. This western Bulgarian kingdom, with its political center shifting to places like Skopje, Prespa, and ultimately Ohrid, was led by the Kumtopoli dynasty, most notably by Tsar Samuel, who reigned from approximately 997 to 1014. Samuel was a skilled military commander and a determined ruler who waged a long and desperate struggle against the Byzantine Empire, now led by the equally formidable Emperor Basil II, who would earn the grim epithet, Bulgarictonos, or the Bulgar Slayer. For decades, Samuel managed to resist Byzantine advances, launching his own campaigns into Byzantine territory and attempting to rally Bulgarian resistance. He expanded his control over much of the western and central Balkans, creating a large, though ultimately fragile, state. The wars between Samuel and Basil II were brutal and relentless. Basil pursued a systematic policy of attrition, launching annual campaigns into Bulgarian territory, capturing fortresses, and devastating the countryside. Key battles in this long struggle included the Battle of Sperchios in 996 and the Battle of Skopje in 1004, both significant Byzantine victories. The most decisive and tragic encounter, however, was the Battle of Kleidion, also known as Belasica, in July of 1014. The Bulgarian army under Samuel was decisively defeated by Basil II. Following the battle, Basil reportedly ordered the blinding of some 15,000 Bulgarian prisoners, leaving every 100th man with one eye to lead his comrades back to their Tsar. According to legend, the sight of his blinded army was such a shock to Tsar Samuel that he died of a heart attack 2 days later. Samuel's death was a devastating blow to Bulgarian resistance, though his successors, Gavril Radomir and Ivan Vladislav, continued the struggle for a few more years. However, the Bulgarian state was exhausted, its resources depleted, and its leadership divided. Basil II systematically conquered the remaining Bulgarian strongholds. In 1018 Common Era, with the fall of the last Bulgarian fortress, Dyrrhachium, the First Bulgarian Empire, after more than 3 centuries of existence, was completely subjugated by the Byzantine Empire. Its territory was incorporated into Byzantium, and its independent patriarchate was reduced to an archbishopric under Byzantine control, though it retained its autocephalous status with its seat in Ohrid. The long and glorious chapter of the First Bulgarian Empire had come to a tragic close. Part 3. Centuries under foreign rule, resilience and revival, early 11th century, late 18th century, Chapter 1. The Byzantine yoke. Life in a conquered land, 1018, 1185 Common Era. The year 1018 Common Era marked a somber turning point in Bulgarian history. With the final subjugation of Tsar Samuel's realm by Emperor Basil II, the First Bulgarian Empire ceased to exist as an independent state, and its territories were fully incorporated into the Byzantine Empire. For nearly 170 years, from 1018 until 1185, Bulgaria endured a period of foreign domination, often referred to by Bulgarian historians as the Byzantine yoke. While Byzantine rule brought certain changes and challenges, it was also a period during which the Bulgarian people managed to preserve their distinct identity and cultural traditions, laying the groundwork for future assertions of independence. Emperor Basil II, despite his ruthless conduct during the final stages of the war, adopted a relatively pragmatic policy towards his newly conquered Bulgarian subjects once resistance had ceased. He recognized the need to integrate these vast territories and their population into the empire without provoking excessive resentment that could lead to constant rebellion. He allowed the Bulgarian aristocracy who submitted to him to retain their lands and status, often incorporating them into the Byzantine administrative and military system. The Bulgarian Orthodox Church, while its patriarchal status was abolished, was allowed to continue as an autocephalous archbishopric of Ohrid, retaining jurisdiction over many of the Bulgarian lands and continuing to use Slavonic in its liturgy, a crucial factor in the preservation of Bulgarian language and culture. Basil also initially maintained the existing Bulgarian system of taxation in kind, rather than imposing the heavier Byzantine cash taxes, which helped to alleviate economic hardship in the immediate aftermath of the conquest. However, under Basil's successors, these more lenient policies were often reversed. Later Byzantine emperors tended to be less sensitive to Bulgarian traditions and more focused on extracting resources from the region. The Byzantine administration became more centralized, with Greek officials often appointed to key positions, and Greek clergy were increasingly favored over native Bulgarians in ecclesiastical appointments. Taxation became heavier and was often collected in cash, which placed a significant burden on the predominantly agricultural Bulgarian population. These policies, combined with the arrogance and corruption of some Byzantine officials, fueled discontent and resentment among Bulgarians. This discontent periodically erupted into open rebellion. Two major uprisings challenged Byzantine rule during this period. The first was led by Peter Delian in 1040 to 1041. Delian, who claimed to be a grandson of Tsar Samuel, was proclaimed Tsar of Bulgaria and quickly gained widespread support, with his rebellion spreading throughout much of the Bulgarian lands and even into parts of Greece. The uprising was eventually crushed by the Byzantines, aided by Norwegian Viking mercenaries including the future King Harald Hardrada. A second major revolt occurred in 1072, led by Georgi Vojta, a noble from Skopje, who sought the aid of Constantine Bohdan, a Serbian prince of Bulgarian royal descent. Bohdan was crowned Tsar Peter III, but this uprising too was ultimately suppressed by Byzantine forces. These and other smaller revolts, though unsuccessful in achieving lasting independence, demonstrated the continued existence of a distinct Bulgarian identity and a desire to restore the Bulgarian state. Despite the political subjugation, Bulgarian culture and traditions persisted. The Archbishopric of Ohrid remained an important center for Slavic learning and Orthodox spirituality. Monasteries continued to function as repositories of Bulgarian culture and literacy. The Bogomil heresy, which had emerged during the First Empire, continued to spread in some areas, offering a form of social and religious protest against both Byzantine and ecclesiastical authorities. Furthermore, the passage of Crusader armies through the Balkans during this period sometimes had a destabilizing effect on Byzantine rule, creating opportunities for local unrest or shifting alliances, although the Crusaders themselves often posed a threat to the local population through pillage and violence. After nearly 2 centuries of Byzantine domination, the memory of past independence remained alive among the Bulgarian people, and the conditions were gradually ripening for a new attempt to throw off the foreign yoke and restore their own kingdom. Chapter 2. A Kingdom Reborn, the Second Bulgarian Empire and the Asen Dynasty, 1185, mid-13th century, the late 12th century witnessed a resurgence of Bulgarian spirit and a successful bid to restore national independence after nearly 170 years of Byzantine rule. The catalyst for this momentous change was a large-scale uprising led by two brothers from Tarnovo, Theodore and Asen, members of a noble family of debated origin, possibly Bulgar, Vlach, or Cuman. The revolt, which began in 1185, was fueled by widespread discontent with oppressive Byzantine taxation and the weakening of Byzantine central authority under the Angelos dynasty. Theodore was crowned Tsar of Bulgaria, taking the name Peter IV, with his brother Asen as his co-ruler and chief military commander. Tarnovo, strategically located on the Yantra River and protected by hills, became the new capital of the restored Bulgarian kingdom. The early years of the Second Bulgarian Empire were marked by a determined struggle to secure its independence against Byzantine attempts to crush the rebellion. Tsar Peter IV and Tsar Asen I proved to be capable military leaders, successfully repelling several Byzantine campaigns and gradually expanding their control over Moesia and parts of Thrace and Macedonia. After the assassination of both Asen and Peter, their younger brother Kaloyan ascended the throne in 1197. Kaloyan, known as the Roman Slayer, Romaiktonos, in a deliberate echo of Basil II's epithet, was one of the most formidable rulers of the Second Bulgarian Empire. He was a skilled diplomat and a ruthless military commander who significantly expanded Bulgaria's borders and enhanced its international standing. A pivotal moment in Kaloyan's reign came with the Fourth Crusade and the capture of Constantinople by the Latin Crusaders in 1204. The establishment of the Latin Empire in place of the Byzantine one created a new and complex political landscape in the Balkans. Kaloyan initially sought an alliance with the Latins, but when they arrogantly rebuffed his offers and laid claim to former Byzantine territories now held by Bulgaria, he turned against them. In April 1205, at the Battle of Adrianople, Kaloyan's forces, which included a large contingent of Cuman light cavalry, inflicted a devastating defeat on the Latin Crusader army. The Latin Emperor Baldwin I of Constantinople was captured and later died in Bulgarian captivity. This victory was a stunning achievement, shattering the myth of Latin invincibility and establishing Bulgaria as the dominant power in the Balkans. Kaloyan also engaged in astute diplomatic correspondence with Pope Innocent III, seeking recognition of his imperial title and the establishment of a Bulgarian patriarchate. While he received a royal crown from the Pope and recognition of an Archbishop of Tarnovo as primate, a full patriarchal title recognized by Rome was not immediately forthcoming. Kaloyan's reign, however, ended abruptly with his assassination during the siege of Thessaloniki in 1207. The apogee of the Second Bulgarian Empire was reached during the reign of Tsar Ivan Asen II, who ruled from 1218 to 1241. Ivan Asen II was a wise statesman, a skilled diplomat, and a successful military leader. He significantly expanded Bulgaria's territory through a combination of astute diplomacy, strategic alliances, and military victories. His most famous triumph came in March 1230 at the Battle of Klokotnitsa, where he decisively defeated Theodore Komnenos Doukas, the ambitious ruler of the Despotate of Epirus, who had proclaimed himself Emperor of Thessaloniki. This victory made Bulgaria the undisputed hegemon of southeastern Europe, its borders stretching from the Black Sea to the Adriatic and Aegean seas. Ivan Asen II's reign was also a period of considerable economic prosperity and cultural flourishing. He minted gold coins, encouraged trade, and maintained peaceful relations with many of his neighbors for much of his rule. Tarnovo, his capital, grew into a major political, religious, and cultural center, often referred to as the Third Rome, or the New Constantinople. The Tarnovo literary and artistic schools flourished, producing fine manuscripts, icons, and church architecture. He also restored the Bulgarian Patriarchate, gaining recognition for its independence from the Eastern Orthodox Patriarchates. Ivan Asen II is remembered as one of Bulgaria's greatest rulers, a monarch who brought stability, power, and prestige to the reborn Bulgarian kingdom. His reign marked a high point for the Second Bulgarian Empire, a period when it truly shone as a major European power. Chapter 3: Fragmentation and Decline, The Path to Ottoman Conquest, Mid-13th Century, Late 14th Century. The impressive achievements of Tsar Ivan Asen II's reign unfortunately proved to be a high water mark for the Second Bulgarian Empire. The decades following his death in 1241 were characterized by a gradual but inexorable decline, marked by internal weaknesses, dynastic instability, the rise of powerful and often rebellious feudal nobles, boyars, and increasing external pressures from a host of ambitious neighbors and new invaders. This period of fragmentation and turmoil slowly eroded the strength and cohesion of the Bulgarian state, ultimately leaving it vulnerable to the rising power of the Ottoman Turks. One of the major internal problems was the frequent succession of weak or short-lived rulers and the ensuing dynastic rivalries. After Ivan Asen II, the throne was often contested, leading to civil wars and a weakening of central royal authority. Powerful boyar families took advantage of this instability to increase their own power and autonomy, effectively creating semi-independent feudal domains within the kingdom. This feudal fragmentation undermined the unity of the state and its ability to mount a coordinated defense against external threats. Peasant discontent, fueled by oppressive taxation and the abuses of local lords, also simmered, sometimes erupting into open revolt. The most famous of these was the uprising led by Ivaylo, a swineherd, in 1277. Ivaylo managed to defeat several Tatar raiding parties and even the royal army, briefly seizing the Bulgarian throne and being crowned Tsar before being overthrown by the nobility. While his reign was short, Ivaylo's rebellion highlighted the deep social tensions within the declining Bulgarian state. Externally, Bulgaria faced a multitude of threats. The Mongol Golden Horde, which had swept across Eastern Europe in the mid-13th century, launched devastating raids into Bulgarian territory, forcing Bulgarian Tsars to pay tribute and accept Mongol suzerainty for a period. To the north, the Kingdom of Hungary continued to exert pressure on Bulgaria's northwestern frontiers. To the west and south, the revived Byzantine Empire under the Paleologan dynasty and the expanding Kingdom of Serbia, particularly under strong rulers like Stefan Dušan in the mid-14th century, chipped away at Bulgarian territories. Stefan Dušan, in fact, managed to create a large Serbian empire that briefly eclipsed Bulgaria as the dominant power in the Central Balkans. By the mid-14th century, the once unified Second Bulgarian Empire had effectively disintegrated into several smaller, often competing, statelets. The main part of the kingdom was centered around Tarnovo, but other semi-independent entities emerged, such as the Tsardom of Vidin in the northwest, ruled by a branch of the Shishman dynasty, and the Despotate of Dobruja in the northeast, along the Black Sea coast. This political fragmentation severely weakened Bulgaria's ability to resist the newest and most formidable threat to emerge in the Balkans, the Ottoman Turks. The Ottomans, having established a strong foothold in Europe at Gallipoli in 1354, began their relentless expansion into the Balkan Peninsula. They were a highly motivated and disciplined military force, employing innovative tactics and effectively utilizing their Janissary infantry and Sipahi cavalry. The fragmented and feuding Balkan states, including the Bulgarian principalities, were unable to form a united front against the Ottoman advance. One of the first major disasters for the Balkan Christian powers was the Battle of Maritsa River, also known as the Battle of Chernomen, in 1371. An allied army of Serbs and Bulgarians, attempting to halt the Ottoman advance into Macedonia, was crushingly defeated by a smaller Ottoman force. This victory opened the way for further Ottoman conquests in Thrace and Macedonia, and effectively made many remaining Balkan rulers Ottoman vassals. The Bulgarian statelets, weakened and isolated, fell one by one to the advancing Ottoman armies over the next few decades, marking the tragic end of Bulgaria's medieval independence. Chapter 4: The Ottoman Conquest and the Early Centuries of Subjugation. The latter half of the 14th century witnessed the inexorable advance of the Ottoman Turks into the heart of the Balkan Peninsula, and the fragmented Bulgarian statelets were among their primary targets. The Ottoman conquest of Bulgaria was not a single event but a protracted process spanning several decades, characterized by fierce resistance in some areas, vassalage, and ultimately, the complete absorption of Bulgarian lands into the burgeoning Ottoman Empire. This conquest marked the end of Bulgaria's medieval independence and ushered in a period of nearly 5 centuries of Ottoman rule, a transformative era that would profoundly shape Bulgarian society, culture, and national identity. Following the disastrous Battle of Maritsa River in 1371, the Bulgarian rulers, like many other Balkan potentates, were forced to acknowledge Ottoman suzerainty and pay tribute to the Sultan. However, This vassalage was often nominal, and Bulgarian resistance continued. The Ottomans, under capable sultans like Murad I and Bayezid I, systematically targeted key Bulgarian fortresses and cities. Sofia, then known as Srediș or Serdica, a strategically important city in western Bulgaria, fell to the Ottomans in 1382 or 1385 after a long siege. The main Bulgarian kingdom, centered at Tarnovo and ruled by Tsar Ivan Shishman, faced increasing Ottoman pressure. Despite attempts at diplomacy and resistance, Tarnovo, the magnificent capital of the Second Bulgarian Empire, was besieged and captured by Ottoman forces in July 1393 after a 3-month siege. The city was reportedly sacked, its churches desecrated, and many of its leading citizens killed or exiled. The Bulgarian Patriarch Euthymius, a prominent scholar and spiritual leader, was sent into exile. The fall of Tarnovo was a devastating blow, effectively signaling the end of the medieval Bulgarian Tsardom in the east. Resistance continued for a few more years in the Tsardom of Vidin in northwestern Bulgaria, ruled by Ivan Sratsimir, Ivan Shishman's half-brother. Vidin had also become an Ottoman vassal. In 1396, Ivan Sratsimir joined a large crusader army led by King Sigismund of Hungary, which aimed to drive the Ottomans out of Europe. However, this crusade ended in a catastrophic defeat for the Christian forces at the Battle of Nicopolis on the Danube. Following this victory, Sultan Bayezid I moved decisively against Vidin. Ivan Sratsimir was captured, and his Tsardom was annexed by the Ottomans, generally considered to have occurred in 1396 or shortly thereafter, though some Bulgarian territories, perhaps under local lords or briefly under Constantine II, Ivan Stratsimir's son, might have held out until as late as 1422. By the early 15th century, virtually all Bulgarian lands were firmly under Ottoman control. The establishment of Ottoman rule brought profound changes to Bulgarian society. The existing Bulgarian feudal aristocracy was largely eliminated or dispossessed, their lands incorporated into the Ottoman Timur system. Under this system, land was granted to Ottoman military and administrative officials, Sipahis, in exchange for service, particularly cavalry service in times of war. The Bulgarian peasantry, while often subject to heavy taxation and various forms of exploitation, largely remained on the land, working for their new Ottoman masters. The Ottoman state was an Islamic empire, and its non-Muslim subjects, including the Bulgarians, were classified as zimmi. As zimmi, they were granted a degree of religious and communal autonomy under the millet system, but they were also subjected to various legal and social restrictions and had to pay special taxes, most notably the jir, poll tax. One of the most deeply resented aspects of early Ottoman rule was the devsurme, or blood tax, a levy by which young Christian boys were forcibly taken from their families, converted to Islam, and trained to serve in the Ottoman army, particularly in the elite Janissary Corps, or in the palace administration. While this system provided a path for some individuals to achieve high office, it was a source of immense suffering and loss for Christian families. Many churches and monasteries were destroyed or converted into mosques, particularly in the early years of the conquest and during periods of heightened religious zeal. The Bulgarian cultural and intellectual elite was decimated, leading to a decline in literary and artistic production. However, despite the hardships and pressures of foreign rule, the Bulgarian people managed to preserve their Orthodox Christian faith, their language, and their distinct cultural traditions, often in the relative isolation of rural communities and within the walls of surviving monasteries. These elements would become the bedrock for the future national revival. The early centuries of Ottoman subjugation were undoubtedly a dark period in Bulgarian history, but they also forged a resilience and a deep-seated desire for freedom that would eventually lead to a national reawakening. Part 4. The Long Night and the Dawn of National Awakening, 18th Century, 1878. Chapter 1. Life under the Ottoman heel, social, economic, and religious conditions. The centuries of Ottoman rule, stretching from the late 14th, early 15th century to the latter part of the 19th century, profoundly shaped Bulgarian society, its economy, and its religious life. For the Bulgarian people, this long period, often referred to as the Ottoman yoke, or the Turkish slavery, in older national historiography, was characterized by a complex mix of subjugation, adaptation, and the quiet persistence of identity. While the intensity of Ottoman administration and the conditions for non-Muslim subjects varied over time and place, certain fundamental realities defined the Bulgarian experience. As Zimmi, or non-Muslim protected subjects within the Islamic Ottoman Empire, Bulgarians were granted a degree of communal autonomy, particularly in religious and personal matters, under the millet system. The Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in Constantinople, often dominated by Phanariot Greeks, influential Greek families from the Phanar district of Istanbul, was granted authority over the Orthodox Christian populations in the Balkans, including the Bulgarians. This meant that for a significant period, the higher echelons of the Bulgarian church hierarchy were often Greek, and services in many urban churches were conducted in Greek. This led to a gradual Hellenization pressure on urban Bulgarian populations and the Bulgarian clergy, which would later become a major point of contention during the national revival. However, in rural areas and within many monasteries, the Slavonic liturgy and Bulgarian religious traditions continued to be practiced, preserving a crucial element of cultural identity. Bulgarians, like other Zimmi, were subject to various legal and social restrictions. They paid special taxes, most notably the giro or poll tax, which was not levied on Muslims. Their testimony in Islamic courts was often given less weight than that of Muslims, and they faced limitations on building new churches or repairing old ones, ringing church bells, and bearing arms. Sumptuary laws sometimes dictated the colors and types of clothing they could wear to distinguish them from the ruling Muslim population. Economically, the Bulgarian lands were integrated into the vast Ottoman imperial system. Agriculture remained the mainstay of the economy, with Bulgarian peasants cultivating wheat, barley, grapes, and other crops on lands that were often part of the Ottoman Timur system, land grants to military servitors, or later, chifliks, large private estates. While some peasants owned their land, many worked as sharecroppers or laborers, often subject to heavy dues and feudal obligations. Certain regions specialized in particular products. For example, Rose Valley in central Bulgaria became renowned for its cultivation of roses for the production of rose oil, a valuable export commodity. Craftsmanship also flourished in Bulgarian towns, with guilds, esnafi, of artisans producing textiles, metalwork, pottery, and other goods. Trade, both local and long-distance within the empire and with foreign merchants, was also significant. A Bulgarian merchant class, known as the Chorbadzii, emerged over time. These were often wealthier and more influential members of Bulgarian urban society, sometimes acting as intermediaries between the Ottoman authorities and the local Christian population, a role that was complex and often ambiguous, leading to them being both respected and sometimes resented. The Ottoman system, while often oppressive, was not uniformly so across all periods and regions. There were times of relative stability and even prosperity. However, periods of central Ottoman weakness or misrule often led to increased exploitation and insecurity at the local level. One of the darkest periods was the so-called Kırcalı era, spanning the late 18th and early 19th centuries. During this time, the central Ottoman government lost control over many provincial areas, and roaming bands of brigands and rebellious Ottoman soldiers, known as Kırcalıs, terrorized the population, looting, burning villages, and extorting money. This period of anarchy and widespread violence caused immense suffering and displacement, further fueling Bulgarian discontent and a longing for order and security. Despite the hardships and the subordinate status within the Ottoman Empire, Bulgarian society was not static. It adapted, endured, and slowly began to accumulate the social and economic resources that would later contribute to the national awakening and the struggle for independence. Chapter 2: Seeds of Resistance, Haydux, Monasteries, and Preserving Identity. Despite the formidable power of the Ottoman Empire and the often harsh realities of foreign rule, the Bulgarian spirit of resistance and the determination to preserve a distinct cultural and religious identity never fully died out. Throughout the centuries of subjugation, various forms of opposition, both active and passive, emerged, keeping alive the memory of past independence and sowing the seeds for future liberation. Among the most enduring symbols of this resistance were the Haydux, while monasteries served as crucial sanctuaries for Bulgarian faith, language, and culture. The Hayduk tradition was a form of armed resistance, akin to social banditry, that emerged throughout the Balkans in response to Ottoman oppression. Haiduks were typically men, and occasionally women, who fled to the mountains and forests, forming small armed bands, or cheti. They lived outside the law, often launching raids against Ottoman officials, wealthy Turkish landowners, and sometimes even collaborationist elements within their own communities. While their actions were often driven by personal grievances or a desire for plunder, the Haiduks were also widely perceived by the common Bulgarian people as protectors of the oppressed, avengers of injustice, and symbols of defiance against foreign rule. They became legendary figures in Bulgarian folklore, their exploits celebrated in epic songs, poems, and stories. Figures like Inja Voivoda, Chavda Voivoda, and many others were immortalized as folk heroes, embodying courage, cunning, and a spirit of freedom. While the Haiduks were generally unable to pose a serious strategic threat to Ottoman power, their activities maintained a constant, albeit low-level, state of resistance, kept alive a martial tradition, and served as a powerful inspiration for later, more organized revolutionary movements. Alongside such active forms of resistance, the preservation of Bulgarian identity owed a profound debt to the Orthodox Christian monasteries. In an era when secular Bulgarian institutions were largely suppressed or dismantled, monasteries such as the Rila Monastery, Bachkovo Monastery, Troyan Monastery, and the Zograf Monastery on Mount Athos, in Greece, but with strong Bulgarian connections, became vital centers for safeguarding Bulgarian Orthodox faith, the Slavonic language, and Bulgarian cultural traditions. These monastic communities, often located in remote and mountainous regions, managed to maintain a degree of autonomy. Within their walls, monks continued to copy and preserve religious manuscripts in Church Slavonic, keeping alive the literary heritage of medieval Bulgaria. They maintained schools, albeit often rudimentary, where some Bulgarians could receive an education in their own language and faith. Monasteries also served as repositories of Bulgarian art, with their churches adorned with vibrant frescoes and icons created by Bulgarian masters, often depicting Bulgarian saints and historical figures, subtly reinforcing a sense of national continuity. The monasteries were not just spiritual sanctuaries, they were also important social and economic centers for the surrounding Bulgarian communities. They provided charity, medical care, and a sense of collective identity in a world where Bulgarians were a subordinate people. Pilgrimages to major monasteries were important events, reinforcing religious faith and a shared sense of cultural belonging. In addition to monasteries, the quiet persistence of Bulgarian customs, traditions, folklore, and language within family and village life was crucial. Despite centuries of foreign rule and pressures towards assimilation, the Bulgarian language continued to be spoken by the vast majority of the population, and traditional Bulgarian folk culture, with its rich songs, dances, and rituals, remained vibrant. These elements of cultural resilience, nurtured in monasteries and within the fabric of everyday life, formed the essential bedrock upon which the national awakening of the 18th and 19th centuries would be built. They ensured that even during the long night of Ottoman rule, the Bulgarian identity, though suppressed, was never extinguished. Chapter 3. The National Revival, igniting the Bulgarian spirit. The 18th and particularly the 19th centuries witnessed a profound intellectual, cultural, and political awakening among the Bulgarian people, a period known as the Bulgarian National Revival, Vazrajdane. This era was characterized by a renewed interest in Bulgarian history, language, and culture, a growing sense of national consciousness, and ultimately, a determined struggle for educational autonomy, ecclesiastical independence, and political liberation from Ottoman rule. Several key figures, movements, and institutions played a crucial role in igniting and sustaining this revivalist spirit. One of the foundational figures of the Bulgarian National Revival was Father Paisi Hilandarski, a monk from the Hilanda Monastery on Mount Athos. In 1762, Paisi completed his seminal work, Historia Slaviana Bulgarskaya, or Slav Bulgarian History. This relatively short book, written in a passionate and accessible style, recounted the glorious past of the medieval Bulgarian tsars and saints, lamented the current state of subjugation and ignorance among Bulgarians, and issued a fervent call for national self-awareness and pride in their heritage. Paisi's History was not a work of critical historical scholarship in the modern sense, but its emotional impact was immense. It was copied by hand and circulated widely among Bulgarians, awakening a sense of a shared past and a common destiny, and famously asking, "Oh, you unwise and foolish people, why are you ashamed to call yourselves Bulgarians?" His work is considered a cornerstone of the national revival, providing a powerful ideological impetus for the movements that followed. Another important early figure was Bishop Sovrony Vrchansky, a disciple of Paisi, whose own writings and activities helped to spread the new national ideas and promote education in the Bulgarian language. The drive for modern Bulgarian education became a central pillar of the revival. Previously, education for Bulgarians was often rudimentary and largely controlled by the Greek clergy, with Greek being the language of instruction in many schools. Revivalist activists worked tirelessly to establish secular schools where instruction was conducted in Bulgarian, using modern textbooks and methods. Wealthy Bulgarian merchants, guilds, and communities abroad often provided crucial financial support for these new schools. Figures like Vasil Aprilov, Neofit Rilsky, and Peter Beran played key roles in developing Bulgarian educational materials and promoting a modern national curriculum. These schools became vital centers for cultivating national consciousness and training a new generation of Bulgarian intellectuals and leaders. Alongside the struggle for education, a major focus of the national revival was the movement for an independent Bulgarian church. For centuries, the Bulgarian Orthodox Church had been under the jurisdiction of the Greek Patriarchate of Constantinople, and many higher ecclesiastical positions were held by Greek phanariots who often promoted Hellenization. Bulgarian revivalists saw the re-establishment of an autonomous Bulgarian church as essential for preserving their national identity and achieving spiritual independence. This movement, which gained momentum throughout the mid-19th century, involved petitions, protests, and complex negotiations with the Ottoman authorities and the Greek Patriarchate. Finally, in 1870, the Ottoman Sultan issued a firman decree, establishing the Bulgarian Exarchate, an autonomous Bulgarian Orthodox Church with jurisdiction over dioceses where Bulgarians constituted a significant majority. While the Exarchate's boundaries were contested and led to further conflicts with Greek and Serbian national aspirations in regions like Macedonia, its establishment was a momentous victory for the Bulgarian national movement. It provided a unified national institution that transcended Ottoman administrative divisions and played a crucial role in fostering a sense of Bulgarian national unity. The Chitaliște, or reading rooms, also played a vital role during the national revival. These were unique Bulgarian cultural and educational community centers that began to appear in towns and villages from the mid-19th century onwards. Chitaliște typically housed libraries, organized lectures, theatrical performances, and musical events, and served as meeting places for discussion and patriotic activity. They became important hubs for disseminating national ideas, promoting literacy, and fostering a sense of collective Bulgarian identity. Through the combined efforts of these pioneering individuals, the new schools, the struggle for church independence, and the grassroots cultural work of the Chitaliște, the Bulgarian spirit was reawakened, paving the way for the final stage of the national liberation struggle. Chapter 4. Towards Freedom, Revolutionary Movements and the Path to Liberation. The cultural and spiritual awakening of the Bulgarian national revival in the 19th century inevitably fueled a growing desire for political freedom and the restoration of an independent Bulgarian state. As national consciousness strengthened, revolutionary ideas began to take root, leading to the formation of organized movements aimed at overthrowing Ottoman rule. This struggle for liberation was characterized by the efforts of charismatic leaders, the establishment of secret committees, heroic but often tragic uprisings, and ultimately, the intervention of foreign powers. The influence of European nationalism and the successful liberation movements in neighboring Balkan states, such as Greece and Serbia, provided both inspiration and a model for Bulgarian revolutionaries. Early efforts to organize armed resistance were often initiated by Bulgarian émigrés in neighboring countries like Romania and Serbia. Georgy Rakovsky, a prominent writer and revolutionary, was one of the key figures in this early phase. In the 1860s, he established Bulgarian legions in Belgrade, hoping to train a military force that could participate in a broader Balkan uprising against the Ottomans. While these early attempts had limited practical success, they helped to foster a revolutionary tradition and inspire a new generation of activists. The most iconic and revered figure of the Bulgarian revolutionary movement is undoubtedly Vasil Levski. Known as the Apostle of Freedom, Levski possessed a remarkable vision and organizational genius. Unlike earlier émigré-led efforts, Levski believed that liberation had to be prepared from within Bulgaria itself. In the late 1860s and early 1870s, he traveled extensively throughout the Bulgarian lands, often in disguise and at great personal risk, establishing a network of secret local revolutionary committees. This network, known as the Internal Revolutionary Organization, IRO, was intended to prepare the Bulgarian people for a general, well-organized national uprising that would lead to the establishment of a pure and sacred republic, based on principles of democracy and equality for all citizens, regardless of ethnicity or religion. Levski's vision was remarkably progressive for its time. Tragically, his revolutionary activities were cut short when he was captured by Ottoman authorities in late 1872 and hanged in Sofia in February 1873. His death was a severe blow to the movement, but his ideals and his self-sacrifice became a powerful symbol of Bulgarian aspirations for freedom. Another towering figure of this period was Hristo Botev, a brilliant poet and ardent revolutionary. Botev combined fiery patriotic verse with radical political ideas. He was critical of the more moderate approaches and advocated for immediate revolutionary action. In May 1876, during the April Uprising, Botev led a small band of armed émigrés who commandeered an Austrian steamship on the Danube and landed on the Bulgarian coast, hoping to join the insurgents and galvanize further resistance. While his daring act was militarily insignificant and he was soon killed in battle, Botev's poetic legacy and his heroic death cemented his place as a national martyr and a symbol of selfless dedication to the cause of liberation. The culmination of these revolutionary efforts was the April Uprising of 1876. Prepared by successors to Levski's IRO, most notably Georgy Benkovsky, Panayovalov, and Todor Kabalshkov, the uprising was planned to be a coordinated, large-scale revolt across several revolutionary districts. However, due to poor organization in some areas, betrayal, and premature outbreaks, the uprising was largely confined to certain regions, particularly around Plovdiv, Panagurishte, and Koprivshtitsa. The insurgents, though fighting with immense courage, were poorly armed and vastly outnumbered by regular Ottoman troops and irregular Bashi Bazouk units. The Ottoman response was swift and brutal. The uprising was mercilessly crushed, with widespread massacres of civilians, burning of villages, and other atrocities. Thousands of Bulgarians perished in what became known as the Bulgarian Horrors. While the April Uprising was a military failure, its political consequences were immense. The brutal suppression of the revolt, widely publicized in Europe by journalists like Januarius Magahan and political figures like William Gladstone, provoked a wave of international outrage and condemnation of Ottoman barbarity. This outcry significantly shifted public opinion in countries like Great Britain and Russia, creating a more favorable climate for intervention. Russia, which had long seen itself as the protector of Orthodox Slavs in the Balkans, used the Bulgarian atrocities as a pretext, alongside its own strategic ambitions, to declare war on the Ottoman Empire in April 1877. The ensuing Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878, often referred to in Bulgaria as the War of Liberation, saw Russian armies, supported by significant numbers of Bulgarian volunteers, Opolchonci, who fought with great distinction, advance southwards through Bulgaria, inflicting a series of defeats on the Ottoman forces. Key battles like those at Shipka Pass, where Bulgarian volunteers played a crucial role in repelling Ottoman attacks, became legendary symbols of Bulgarian heroism. The war ended with a Russian victory and the signing of the Treaty of San Stefano in March 1878, which finally brought an end to 5 centuries of Ottoman rule and marked the rebirth of an independent Bulgarian state. Part 5. The Third Bulgarian State, Independence, Wars, and Ideologies, 1878, 1946, Chapter 1. From Liberation to Principality, Building a Modern State. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878 culminated in a decisive Russian victory and the signing of the Treaty of San Stefano on March 3, 1878. This treaty, dictated by Russia, envisaged the creation of a large, autonomous Bulgarian principality, encompassing most of the ethnic Bulgarian territories in Moesia, Thrace, and Macedonia. For Bulgarians, San Stefano Bulgaria represented the fulfillment of their national aspirations, the restoration of a state comparable in size to their medieval empires. March 3rd is still celebrated as Bulgaria's National Liberation Day. However, the other great powers of Europe, particularly Great Britain and Austria-Hungary, viewed the creation of such a large Russian client state in the Balkans with alarm, fearing it would upset the balance of power in the region and give Russia undue influence. Consequently, the Treaty of San Stefano was swiftly revised a few months later at the Congress of Berlin, held in June and July of 1878. The Congress, dominated by the interests of the great powers, significantly reduced the size of the newly liberated Bulgarian state. It created a much smaller Principality of Bulgaria, nominally autonomous but effectively a vassal state under the suzerainty of the Ottoman Sultan, confined to the lands between the Danube River and the Balkan Mountains, with Sofia as its capital. South of the Balkan Mountains, a separate autonomous Ottoman province called Eastern Rumelia, with its capital at Plovdiv, was established. Large Bulgarian populated territories in Macedonia and Adrianople Thrace were returned to direct Ottoman rule. This dismemberment of the San Stefano Bulgaria was a profound disappointment for Bulgarians and became a central focus of Bulgarian national policy for decades to come, fueling irredentist ambitions and contributing to future conflicts. Despite this initial setback, the establishment of the Principality of Bulgaria marked the beginning of modern Bulgarian statehood. One of the first tasks was to create a framework for governance. In 1879, a constituent assembly convened in the ancient capital of Tarnovo and adopted one of the most democratic constitutions in Europe at the time. The Tarnovo constitution established a constitutional monarchy with a unicameral national assembly, Narodno Sabrani, elected by universal male suffrage, and guaranteed a wide range of civil liberties. The great powers selected Alexander of Battenberg, a young German prince with Russian connections, to be the first prince of Bulgaria. Prince Alexander arrived in Bulgaria in 1879 and faced numerous challenges in governing a newly independent nation with a vibrant but often fractious political scene, characterized by the rivalry between liberal and conservative parties. He often clashed with the National Assembly and sought to increase his own powers, even temporarily suspending the constitution. A defining moment in the early history of the Principality was the unification of Bulgaria with Eastern Rumelia in September 1885. This bold act, initiated by Bulgarian patriots in Eastern Rumelia with the support of Prince Alexander, was a direct challenge to the Berlin Treaty. Despite the opposition of some great powers, particularly Russia, which felt its influence was being undermined, the unification was successfully achieved. However, it provoked a hostile reaction from neighboring Serbia, which, encouraged by Austria-Hungary, declared war on Bulgaria in November 1885, fearing Bulgaria's increased size and influence. The ensuing Serbo-Bulgarian War was short but decisive. The young and relatively inexperienced Bulgarian army, though initially outnumbered and caught by surprise, rallied under the command of its officers and inflicted a series of defeats on the Serbian forces, most notably at Slivnica. The victory in the Serbo-Bulgarian War was a tremendous boost to Bulgarian national morale and confirmed the unification, demonstrating the new state's ability to defend its interests. However, the diplomatic fallout, particularly the strained relations with Russia, eventually led to Prince Alexander of Battenberg's forced abdication in 1886 following a pro-Russian military coup and counter-coup. Chapter 2, Ambitions and Conflicts, the era of Ferdinand I. Following the abdication of Prince Alexander of Battenberg, Bulgaria faced a period of political crisis and uncertainty. Strongman Stefan Stambolov, a prominent liberal politician and former revolutionary, emerged as the leading figure, serving as regent and later as prime minister. Stambolov pursued a policy of national consolidation, modernization, and firm resistance to foreign interference, particularly from Russia. His authoritarian methods and suppression of political opposition made him many enemies, but his government also oversaw significant economic development and strengthened Bulgarian independence. However, his often ruthless tactics eventually led to his fall from power in 1894 and his assassination a year later. In 1887, after a long search, Ferdinand of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, an Austrian officer with connections to several European royal houses, was elected as the new Prince of Bulgaria. Ferdinand was an ambitious, astute, and often cunning ruler who would dominate Bulgarian politics for over 3 decades. Initially, his position was internationally unrecognized, but he gradually consolidated his power, skillfully navigating the complex web of Balkan rivalries and great power politics. His primary foreign policy goal remained the national ideal, the unification of all lands considered ethnically Bulgarian, particularly Macedonia and Adrianople Thrace, which remained under Ottoman rule. This ambition placed Bulgaria on a collision course with its Balkan neighbors, Greece and Serbia, who also had claims in these regions, and with the Ottoman Empire itself. A significant event during Ferdinand's reign was the Illinden-Preobrazhenie uprising in 1903. This was a large-scale, organized revolt by the Bulgarian population in Macedonia and the Adrianople Vilayet against Ottoman rule, led by the internal Macedonian Adrianople Revolutionary Organization, AMARO. The uprising, though fought with great heroism, was brutally suppressed by Ottoman forces, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. While Bulgaria did not directly intervene militarily, the events further inflamed nationalist sentiment and reinforced the determination to achieve the unification of all Bulgarian lands. Ferdinand formally declared Bulgaria's full independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1908, elevating himself to the title of Tsar. This move coincided with Austria-Hungary's annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and was recognized by the great powers. The culmination of Bulgaria's revisionist ambitions came with the Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913. In the First Balkan War, Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro formed the Balkan League and launched a coordinated attack against the Ottoman Empire. The League achieved stunning victories, and the Ottomans were largely driven out of their remaining European territories. Bulgarian forces bore the brunt of the fighting in Thrace, capturing Adrianople, Edirne, after a difficult siege. However, the victorious allies soon fell out over the division of the spoils, particularly in Macedonia. Bulgaria felt that its territorial gains, especially in Macedonia, did not adequately reflect its military contribution. This led to the disastrous Second Balkan War in 1913. Bulgaria, feeling cheated, launched a surprise attack on its former allies, Serbia and Greece. Romania and the Ottoman Empire also joined the war against Bulgaria. Vastly outnumbered and fighting on multiple fronts, Bulgaria was quickly defeated. The subsequent Treaty of Bucharest resulted in significant territorial losses for Bulgaria. It had to cede southern Dobruja to Romania, much of Macedonia was divided between Serbia and Greece, and Adrianople was retaken by the Ottomans. The Second Balkan War was a national catastrophe for Bulgaria, shattering the dream of a Greater Bulgaria, and leaving a deep sense of bitterness, resentment, and a desire for revenge. This second national catastrophe, as it became known, would heavily influence Bulgaria's decision to join the Central Powers in World War I. Chapter 3. Bulgaria in the Great War and the turbulent interwar years. The outcome of the Balkan Wars left Bulgaria feeling isolated, humiliated, and burning with a desire to reclaim the territories it had lost, particularly Macedonia. This strong sense of national irredentism, coupled with strategic calculations and promises from both warring coalitions, heavily influenced Bulgaria's stance during World War I. After a period of initial neutrality, Tsar Ferdinand I and his government, led by Prime Minister Vasil Radoslavov, made the fateful decision to join the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, in October 1915. The primary motivation was the promise of regaining Macedonia from Serbia and potentially other territorial gains at the expense of Romania and Greece if the Allies were defeated. Bulgarian forces played a significant role on the Balkan front. They participated in the successful campaign against Serbia in 1915, occupying much of Macedonia. They also fought against Allied forces, British, French, Serbian, and later Greek, on the Salonika front in northern Greece. For a time, it seemed that Bulgaria's war aims might be achieved. However, as the tide of the war turned against the Central Powers in 1918, the Salonika front collapsed. Facing military defeat and growing internal unrest, Bulgaria was forced to seek an armistice in September 1918. Tsar Ferdinand I abdicated in favor of his son, Boris III, and went into exile. The Treaty of Neuilly-sur-Seine, signed in November 1919, imposed harsh terms on defeated Bulgaria. It suffered further territorial losses. Western Thrace was ceded to Greece, depriving Bulgaria of its access to the Aegean Sea. Several border territories were given to the newly formed Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, later Yugoslavia, and southern Dobruja remained with Romania. Bulgaria was also subjected to heavy reparations payments and severe limitations on the size of its army. The treaty was widely seen in Bulgaria as another national catastrophe, deepening the sense of injustice and fueling revisionist sentiments that would persist throughout the interwar period. The interwar years in Bulgaria were marked by profound political instability, social unrest, and economic difficulties. The immediate post-war period saw the rise of Alexander Stamboliski and his Bulgarian Agrarian National Union, BANU. Stamboliski, who became prime minister in 1919, pursued policies aimed at benefiting the peasantry, who formed the majority of the population. He implemented land reforms, sought peaceful relations with Bulgaria's neighbors, and opposed the militaristic and revankist ambitions of some nationalist factions. However, his policies alienated many powerful groups, including the military, urban elites, and the Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization, IMRO, which continued its struggle for Macedonian autonomy or annexation to Bulgaria and often acted as a state within a state. In June 1923, Stambolishi's government was overthrown in a military coup, and he was brutally assassinated. The coup was followed by a period of right-wing authoritarian rule, often characterized by political repression and violence. A communist uprising in September 1923 was harshly suppressed. Throughout the 1920s and early 1930s, Bulgarian politics remained turbulent, with frequent changes of government, political assassinations, and ongoing interference from IMRO and military factions. The global Great Depression further exacerbated Bulgaria's economic problems. In 1934, another military coup, led by the Sveno Group, temporarily abolished political parties and established an authoritarian regime. However, Tsar Boris III, who had initially supported the coup, gradually consolidated his own power, eventually establishing a form of royal authoritarianism by the late 1930s, skillfully maneuvering between different political factions and trying to maintain stability while navigating the increasingly dangerous international situation in Europe. Chapter 4. Caught in the Maelstrom, Bulgaria in World War II and the end of monarchy. As Europe moved inexorably towards another major conflict in the late 1930s, Bulgaria, under Tsar Boris III, found itself in a precarious position. Still nursing the grievances from the Treaty of Nally and harboring hopes of peacefully regaining lost territories, particularly southern Dobruja from Romania and access to the Aegean Sea, Bulgaria initially pursued a policy of neutrality. Tsar Boris was acutely aware of the dangers of being drawn into a war between the great powers and sought to maintain a delicate balance. However, the geopolitical pressures and the shifting fortunes of war in Europe made neutrality increasingly difficult to sustain. Bulgaria had strong economic ties with Germany, and there was considerable pro-German sentiment among some military and political circles, fueled by revisionist hopes. Following the early successes of Nazi Germany and the Axis powers, and under direct pressure from Berlin, Bulgaria gradually aligned itself with the Axis. In September 1940, through the Treaty of Craiova, negotiated with German and Italian mediation, Bulgaria peacefully regained southern Dobruja from Romania, a significant diplomatic success for Tsar Boris that greatly enhanced his popularity. In March 1941, Bulgaria formally joined the Tripartite Pact, becoming an ally of Germany, Italy, and Japan. This decision was largely driven by the desire to avoid being invaded and the prospect of further territorial gains without direct military involvement in major campaigns. German troops were allowed to pass through Bulgaria to attack Yugoslavia and Greece. As a reward for its alliance, Bulgaria was permitted to occupy and administer significant territories in Yugoslav Macedonia, an area known as Vardar Macedonia, as well as parts of Greek Thrace and eastern Serbia. For many Bulgarians, this appeared to be the realization of their long-held national ideal of a Greater Bulgaria. However, Bulgaria's role as an Axis ally was complex and, in some respects, reluctant. Tsar Boris skillfully resisted German pressure to send Bulgarian troops to fight on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union, a country with which Bulgaria had strong historical and cultural ties and deep popular sympathy. He argued that the Bulgarian army was needed for occupation duties in the Balkans and to defend against a potential Turkish threat. This refusal to commit troops against Russia was a significant act of defiance within the Axis alliance. One of the most controversial and debated aspects of Bulgaria's wartime history concerns its policies towards the Jewish population. Within Bulgaria's pre-war borders, the Jewish community, numbering around 50,000, was largely saved from deportation to Nazi death camps. This was due to a combination of factors, including protests from prominent Bulgarian public figures, the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens, as well as the maneuvering and delaying tactics of Tsar Boris and some government officials. However, the record is tragically different for the Jews in the Bulgarian-occupied territories of Yugoslav Macedonia and Greek Thrace. There, under direct German pressure and with the complicity of Bulgarian occupation authorities, over 11,000 Jews were rounded up and deported to Treblinka, where they perished. This dual legacy, the rescue of Jews within Bulgaria proper and the deportation from occupied lands, remains a sensitive and painful chapter in Bulgarian history. In August 1943, Tsar Boris III died suddenly and mysteriously at the age of 49, shortly after a stormy meeting with Adolf Hitler in Germany. His death, the cause of which is still debated, plunged Bulgaria into a political crisis. He was succeeded by his 6-year-old son, Simeon II, with a regency council appointed to govern the country. As the tide of war turned decisively against the Axis powers, Bulgaria found itself in an increasingly untenable position. In late August 1944, with the Red Army approaching its borders, Bulgaria attempted to declare neutrality and withdraw from the war. However, on September 5, 1944, the Soviet Union declared war on Bulgaria and Soviet troops entered the country, meeting little resistance. On September 9, 1944, a coup d'état organized by the Fatherland Front, a coalition of anti-fascist parties including communists, agrarians, and Sveno members, overthrew the pro-Axis government. Bulgaria officially joined the Allies for the remainder of the war, with Bulgarian troops fighting alongside the Red Army against German forces in Yugoslavia, Hungary, and Austria. The immediate post-war period was marked by a rapid consolidation of power by the Bulgarian Communist Party, backed by the Soviet Union. A People's Court was established to try and execute thousands of former government officials, military officers, and public figures accused of collaboration with the Axis or war crimes. In September 1946, a referendum, held under conditions of communist control, overwhelmingly voted to abolish the monarchy. The young Tsar Simeon II and the royal family were forced into exile. The People's Republic of Bulgaria was proclaimed, marking the end of the Third Bulgarian Tsardom and the beginning of nearly 45 years of communist rule. Conclusion: the enduring thread, Bulgaria's place in the tapestry of time, the long and often tumultuous history of Bulgaria, stretching from the mists of Thracian antiquity to its contemporary place within the European Union, is a compelling narrative of resilience, cultural synthesis, and an unyielding struggle for identity and statehood. Situated at a perennial crossroads of civilizations, empires, and ideologies, the Bulgarian lands and their people have witnessed and participated in some of the most formative events in European history. Their journey, marked by periods of imperial grandeur, devastating conquests, centuries of foreign domination, and inspiring national reawakenings, reveals an enduring spirit and a profound capacity for survival and adaptation. From the forging of the First Bulgarian Empire through the fusion of Bulgar and Slav, to the pivotal adoption of Christianity and the creation of the Cyrillic script, a monumental contribution that would shape the spiritual and intellectual lives of hundreds of millions across Eastern Europe, Bulgaria quickly established itself as a significant cultural and political force. The golden age of Tsar Simeon I, with its flourishing arts, literature, and territorial expansion, remains a testament to this early brilliance. Even when submerged within the Byzantine and later the Ottoman empires, the thread of Bulgarian identity, nurtured by its Orthodox faith, its distinct language, and its rich folklore, was never broken. Monasteries stood as quiet bastions of culture, aqueducts as symbols of defiance, until the powerful wave of the national revival in the 18th and 19th centuries reawakened a collective consciousness and a fervent desire for freedom. The re-establishment of a Bulgarian state in 1878, though initially constrained by the dictates of great power politics, ushered in a new era of nation-building, modernization, and the pursuit of national unification. This period was fraught with challenges: the heartaches of the Treaty of Berlin, the triumphs and tragedies of the Balkan Wars and two World Wars, and the deep ideological divisions that often characterized its political life. The nearly half-century of communist rule following World War II brought further profound transformations, with industrialization and social changes occurring alongside political repression and alignment within the Soviet bloc. The peaceful transition to democracy in 1989 opened yet another chapter, one defined by the complexities of economic reform, political pluralism, and Bulgaria's successful integration into the Euro-Atlantic community. Reflecting on this vast historical panorama, several lessons emerge. The impact of geography has been a constant, placing Bulgaria at the nexus of strategic interests and cultural flows, often making it a battleground but also a bridge. The ability to navigate the ambitions of larger neighboring powers has been a recurring theme, demanding astute statesmanship and often painful compromises. Perhaps most significantly, Bulgaria's history underscores the profound importance of national unity, cultural identity, and a shared vision for the future. The resilience shown by the Bulgarian people in preserving their language, faith, and traditions through centuries of adversity is a powerful testament to the human spirit. Today, Bulgaria stands as a modern European nation, proud of its rich heritage and grappling with contemporary challenges. Its journey continues, shaped by the enduring threads of its complex past, the legacy of Thracian gold, the echoes of imperial glory, the quiet strength of cultural preservation, and the unwavering aspiration for freedom and progress. Bulgaria's story is a vital and integral part of the larger European tapestry, a narrative that continues to unfold, contributing its unique colors and patterns to the ever-evolving story of the continent and the world.